SaGa Frontier 2 first released back in 1999 for the original PlayStation, making its way across to the West the year after. It was the 8th game in the SaGa series at that time, and like many of the games in its series, it has now made its way to the Nintendo Switch in remastered form, joining amongst others its predecessor, SaGa Frontier. But should this game be Frontier and centre of your playlist, or is it a bit of a saga to get through? Well, thank you to Square Enix for the review code, and now let's find out.
Shaking the world. William Knights.
So in terms of story then, SaGa Frontier 2 takes a two-pronged attack style. You have two main characters, one being called Gustav and the other being named Will, and the story will flip between each of these characters before ultimately bringing everything together towards the end. So Gustav was the heir to the throne in the country of Finney, but is exiled by his father at the age of 7 after failing the coming-of-age ceremony of lifting the sword Firebrand. He shows no magical abilities when doing this and is therefore sent away, and his mother, in protestation, goes with him. On the other hand, you have Will, who is what's known as a digger, looking to find a legendary object known as the egg. He lives with his aunt and uncle after the death of his parents, and his adventure sees him find out more about the death of his father, who himself was also a famous digger. The story is told in quite an interesting way. The game is broken up into segments, some of which will be playable segments that take a while to get through, others are pure story and will fill in some of the gaps of what's going on. But you can choose which of these to play. You can follow one of the storylines more in particular, and you can miss parts out, which will have an effect on the rest of the story, possibly closing off future storylines. It's an interesting take, and it does keep you quite invested in the characters, and there were certainly some twists along the way. I preferred Gustav's section myself. I found that more interesting, and I found the gameplay in those sections a bit more enjoyable. So looking at gameplay then, and SaGa Frontier 2 is an RPG. You'll visit various towns and different places, making your way across each screen, being embroiled in random battles at times, albeit they're not random in the sense that you can't avoid them at all. You will see the enemies on screen, and there'll be story beats and boss battles as you make your way through each chapter. Now, I've always liked the SaGa games. I like some of their core mechanics, some of the things that they do that I don't think you've really seen in other RPGs and certainly didn't see back in the day. A lot of what you would have seen previously in other games in this series at that time is evident here. Things such as the Glimmer system, where you can learn new moves almost on the fly. Your character will learn them mid-battle sometimes, and these are shown by a light bulb above the character's head. Combos, where by trying a different combination of moves across your party, sometimes these characters will come together and perform a more powerful move, and it's kind of trial and error as to which moves will combo with others. You have the life point system, which sees each character have a specific number of life points, and should they lose all of these, then that character is gone. I know that some changes were made for this remaster compared to the original game. I never played the game originally, so I'm not going to be able to be very specific on what these were, but I know one in particular did relate to the life point system, whereas in the original they were much harder to regain, meaning the threat of losing a character permanently was always there. Here you can restore all of your life points by going and resting at an inn, which does certainly take away that threat and reduces some of the stress mid-battle of having to constantly use your life points. This life point system is fantastic, by the way. I've always enjoyed it in the SaGa games, and here, if you find yourself low on health, you can choose, say, to heal yourself with a healing spell, but you can also use a life point to get all of your health back. But obviously, as these start ticking away, you need to make sure you don't get to 0, because if you do, you'll lose that character. And you can also use life points to escape from battles with 100% certainty. I think, again, that's a very nice touch that this game has. There are a host of other systems in this game, and I will touch on some of them in a moment. But what I will say first, just to get a bit of a negative out of the way, because overall there is a lot good to say about this game, is that I don't think this game does a very good job of explaining these systems. I was someone that had played a few of the SaGa games before, and as certain terms were coming up, or I was seeing certain things in menus, it was ringing a bell, and I was like, oh yep, I remember what Glimmer means, I know what that is. But I don't think this game actually explains a lot of this very well at all. So if you're new to the series, it will take you a while, in my opinion, to really get to grips with what the game wants you to do. Getting that out of the way though, I do like a lot of the game's systems. I mean, it's a traditional turn-based RPG, and you have a host of different moves that your characters will learn along the way, physical-based and spell-based, and you have a certain amount of weapon and spell points to use to carry these moves out. Aside from this though, you can also take part in duels. Now when you partake in a battle, sometimes you will be given the option, rather than fight as a team, to take part in a one-on-one duel, selecting one of your characters in the process. This handles things slightly differently in that you're given 4 moves that you can pick at once and try to combo these if you can. These may be to buff your character, debuff the enemy, or attack in some way, physical or spell-based, to try and take the enemy down. Victory in these battles will earn you points. Now, you don't get experience points in the traditional way of most RPGs. As with most of the SaGa games, instead you level up in areas of most use. If you use a lot of sword attacks, you'll find your sword moves increase quicker if you use a particular spell, etc, etc. So carrying out a duel will see that one character get a fair few more of these, points, if you like. There are also even times when the game almost becomes like a TRPG and you're taken to a top-down screen where your whole army is available to you and things play out tactic style. It's quite basic in how it works, but it is quite a nice change of pace, and this game does have quite a few mechanics hidden away within its menus. As well as the things I've already mentioned, there are things such as being able to learn new arts, they're basically your new moves, and assign them to characters. Change the formation of your party in battle, give each character a particular role within the team, and even pass down abilities to other characters as you move through the decade. There's a huge amount here, and the biggest drawback, as I've already mentioned, is really the fact the game doesn't explain this very well at all. Some of the new features added for this remaster include the aforementioned character growth, where you can inherit skills from another character. There are more powerful bosses that have been added to the game for an extra challenge. There is something called the Dig, which is almost like a Tamagotchi style game where you can send off your diggers that you'll find at certain points in the game to go and find resources for you. They'll dig and then come back and give those resources to you. There are some new story elements and a new Game Plus mode added as well. Moving on to controls, and the game obviously plays from an isometric viewpoint as you'll move about the map, going off of each screen onto the next as you visit each town or new area. Now, the controls themselves are okay, but you will find yourself getting stuck on the background objects at times, or even on other characters within each place. You'll have NPCs that are on a certain track that they'll move across to and fro, and they do seem to get in your way quite a lot. They can block your way, so when you come out of a door from a shop, say, you just can't move and you need to go back in the shop and come back out again, so they're not on that particular track yet. It's just a few oddities that do make it a bit frustrating, and there are a lot of menus to navigate which, again, as I've said, aren't explained particularly well, which can lead to some head-scratching moments as you just try to familiarise yourself with everything the game wants you to know. On the whole though, the controls aren't too bad. Gameplay is a strange one because I do feel, as with all of the SaGa games, that I have a lot of respect for just how different they tried to be. And you can never really blame a game for wanting to stand out against its competition. My biggest complaint really is that having incorporated all of these ideas, they don't explain a lot of them very well. And if you are a new time player to this game solely, that may be hard enough. If you're new to the whole series, it will take you a while to get ahead of what's going on. But once you do, I do feel you will enjoy it. Gameplay gets 15 out of 20. Controls, as I mentioned, are fine. They do the job okay, but you will find those annoyances like getting stuck on background objects or characters at times. They get 14 out of 20. Moving on to the visuals and the performance first and foremost then. And this SaGa game took quite a big step away from its predecessor in that it went for watercolor painted backgrounds with character sprites on top. It's another bold choice from a SaGa game, and again, it's something I really appreciate. And in terms of this remaster, those watercolor graphics have been upgraded to a higher resolution, and you can certainly see this when you compare it to the original game. Now, in and of themselves, I do really like the watercolor backgrounds. I think they look very pleasing. I think there's a good use of color. Those pale representations work very well, but a stronger use of color is used at times to warm scenes up. I think it's a good stylistic choice. I would have loved to have played it back then. I think it would have blown my mind, and it still looks great to this day. There are a couple of issues with it. They're minor gripes, but they're things that I do need to note. I do feel that sometimes some of the backgrounds don't look quite as good. There are certain areas that where the artistic style, while still using that watercolor theme, don't look quite as impressive as some of the other drawn backgrounds. I also feel that the style used does mean you get a lot of static backgrounds. There's not very much moving in them at all. You will get the occasional thing, you'll see a washing on a washing line blowing in the wind, but other areas are completely static and it's just a bit jarring. My other real complaint with it refers to having the character sprites on top. They do look superimposed, which is a bit odd, but it's not really even that. It's that some of the sprite work looks really washed out. It doesn't quite look as strong color-wise or as vibrant as it should look, which kind of makes the whole point of having it juxtaposed with the lighter backgrounds fail. I think they could have done some work on upscaling or improving the vibrancy of the sprite work, as they clearly have done with the backgrounds. I think had they have done that, this art style or this merging of two art styles would have worked much better in this remaster. Performance-wise, I didn't have any issues, so that's good. Everything ran as it should, so there's not a problem there. And moving on to the music or the audio, this game in the SaGa series moved away from composer Kenji Ito, and instead you had Masashi Hamazu in charge. I like the music in general. I think there's some very nice tunes in here, and it's always fitting. It has that kind of regal feel to it. My biggest problem with the music is that most of it is on a very short loop. Now, a lot of the time this won't be a problem, you won't really notice it, but get stuck in an area for any amount of time, like I did in, I think it's called The City of Night, and that loop really does start to become quite grating. Also, there are times when the music stops completely. At first I wasn't sure whether this was a bug, but the sound effects still play, and it seems to be at quite poignant moments where you'd feel music would enhance the scene. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason for it. There just seems to be times where the music stops and then doesn't play again until that scene ends or whatever. It's just a bit strange. And finally, there is no voice acting in the game. It's all done via text. Not a big problem for me personally. I don't think it really hurts the game, but seeing as this was a remaster, it could have been something they added. On the whole though, I wasn't overly bothered that they didn't add this. Visuals do look lovely in isolation, but when you start to put it all together, there are times it doesn't quite mesh as well as it should, and more could have been done in terms of the character sprites, I feel, in this remaster to make sure that wasn't the case. They get 17 out of 20. Audio, as I said, I do like, although the loop is just too short a lot of the time and this does start to lead to some irritation. It gets 16 out of 20. SaGa Frontier 2 cost £24.99 and regional equivalents are on your screen now. To be fair, this is a lower price than I was expected when I saw that this game was revealed in the recent Nintendo Direct. And for a remaster, not a full remake, I think that is a good choice. It's a sizable adventure. We're not talking about 100 hours worth here, I don't think, at least, unless obviously the added content is that substantial. But I do appreciate that the SaGa series always tries to do things a bit differently from other RPGs, and it does make them stand out in what is a very crowded genre. I do also feel though that there are better SaGa games on the Switch already, and sometimes not even necessarily better games, but just ones that explain their mechanics quicker and in a more succinct way that allow you to get into the action from an earlier point and avoid a few hours of bewilderment almost as you learn the ropes. That being said, I do think this is a fair price for what is a good game, just one that takes a while to get going unless you've played it before and know exactly what you're doing, and on the whole, value gets 17 out of 20. To conclude, SaGa Frontier 2 is a game that I probably like more than the overall score will attest to. This is because, as a review, I do have to point out that I don't think it does a very good job of explaining some of its mechanics, despite the fact these mechanics are actually very good. It's a fun game to play. I would advise having some sort of walkthrough with you when you play it, not necessarily to get through the game in terms of getting stuck, but just to explain the mechanics to you so you can jump in a bit quicker. On the whole, one I'm glad I played and would recommend, just with a few advisory points. SaGa Frontier 2 gets a SwitchUp score of 79%. Thank you everybody for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. Don't forget, if you are looking for eShop credit, you can use our website, switchup.gg, and doing so will get you 5% of your purchase price back as cashback. And there are also links down there to places such as Play Asia, where I believe this game is available. And using our link and code will get you 5% off of your purchase price from there too. Thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.